So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to our viewers around the world, and welcome to IBM Security's webinar, Improve IAM Reliability, Automation, and Accelerate Digital Transformation. Before I pass it off to our speakers, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items. As part of the event console, you will see a Q&A tool on the left-hand side of your screen, which you can use throughout the webinar to contact me for any technical issues or ask our speakers questions. If we do not get to your question throughout the Q&A session, we will follow up via email. More information can be found in the Resources tab on the right-hand side of your console. You can also access the on-demand recording using the same link you used today. So, without further ado, I'd like to pass it over to David Park, Senior TEI Consultant from Forrester, and Marc von Mandel, Worldwide Product Marketing Manager from IBM. David and Marc, I pass it over to you.
All right. Thanks, Beth, and thank you all for being a part of our webinar today. My name is David Park, and I'm a consultant within Forrester's Total Economic Impact practice. I've been invited here today to share some really exciting findings from recent Forrester Consulting research on the business impacts of using IBM's identity and access management services. As Beth mentioned, also joined here today by Marc von Mandel, Worldwide Product Marketing Manager at IBM, and he's going to be providing an overview of IBM's IAM services. So Forrester's Total Economic Impact methodology has been used for really almost 20 years now to help organizations better understand, quantify, and articulate the value proposition of strategic investments in technology. Now, we've used this methodology to help organizations across the world make better informed investment decisions around technology by better understanding the business benefits, costs, risks, and flexibility implications of the technology or service. Now, on today's webinar, I'll be presenting the results of a recent Forrester Consulting Total Economic Impact case study titled The Total Economic Impact of IBM IAM Services. So this study examines and quantifies the potential return on investments that organizations may realize by engaging IBM IAM services. Okay, so we have a lot of interesting content to get through today. So without further ado, let's get right into it. So we'll get to some of our results and findings shortly, but first let's take a quick look at the objectives of today's presentation. So today we'll be focusing on the results of an independent ROI analysis that Forrester conducted to determine the business value of IBM's IAM services for businesses and enterprises considering adopting the solution and service for themselves. Now, please note that the findings that we'll talk about today represent an abridged version of a full study that you'll be able to access through the IBM website. So to start today's session, as I mentioned, Marc from IBM will give us an overview of IBM's IAM services, just to help us get a better understanding of the scope of services involved and how they help organizations solve for some of the most common challenges around adopting cloud-based IAM workloads. We'll then get into the details of the TEI, and I'll go over our methodology and the steps that we take to construct our analysis. I'll then show you what the investment in IBM IAM services could mean to you in really just a couple of high-level financial figures, such as ROI, NPV, and payback. Next, we'll get into the meat of this by really looking at the specific benefits and costs of IBM IAM services so that you can really get a better understanding of how we arrived at the metrics that we did. And then finally, we'll summarize and recap the investment in IBM IAM services in just a handful of metrics. And of course, we'll save 10 to 15 minutes at the end for Q&A. Okay, and with that, I'm going to turn it over to Marc from IBM so he can give you a baseline understanding of what IBM IAM Services is before we walk through the financial analysis so that it all makes sense.
Great, thank you so much, David. So I want to talk to you guys a little bit more about where IBM Security sees every client. And here at IBM Security, we've come to understand that every client is really on their own unique security journey. Every client's journey is different, but there are some common things. They all want to improve their security program. Mission accomplished does not exist in the security space, and frankly, it never will. So let's talk a little bit more about the evolution of identity. Identity and access management has evolved dramatically over the years to become a critical component for many organizations and their strategic initiatives. In the 2000s, it started with back office automation for certain tasks such as granting access to employees and helping with password resets to reduce administrative and help desk overhead. Next, we entered an era all around protection. So weak passwords along with exploiting privileged accounts were the major reasons for some of the significant breaches that you heard of in the news. As traditional network perimeters disappeared, identity became the new perimeter and started becoming a core component of cybersecurity programs to prevent breaches. Next, and today and beyond, identity is now playing a core role in building next-generation services that create a differentiator for our clients. And with the adoption of technologies such as blockchain and cloud, these create new opportunities and the backbone for all future services. So when we talk about identity, it's really more than one thing. And here at IBM, we think of it as many organizations are trying to solve challenges related to IAM without really understanding the pain points and the life cycle of different users accessing their network and devices. As a regular employee, an administrator, and a consumer, they will all have very different journeys and needs. Organizations need to use relevant technologies and strategies to support their journey. And here at IBM, we see a holistic IAM program encompassing privileged identities, governance and administration, access management and authentication. So an effective IAM program really incorporates all of these in the right way. We also talk about keeping the wrong people out is also equally important to safeguarding your business and your data. We call IBM's approach to IAM silent security. What I mean by that is security is not invincible or ineffective, but it remains in the background, facilitating seamless, fast access and only intervening when something is wrong. How can you achieve that silent security? It allows you to be confident that the right people have the right access to the applications and information whenever they need them. IAM should really be enabling digital transformation, providing users and customers with a digital experience that lets them focus on and accomplish their own objectives without worrying about security and without being disrupted unnecessarily by it. Finally, IAM should establish trust, allowing organizations to make informed decisions about user access and manage customer consent, simply and intelligently. So it's also about letting the right people in while safeguarding your organization's systems, data, and applications from unauthorized access. Done right, a successful identity and access management program can provide added business value by reducing IT management costs, enhancing employee productivity, and increasing compliance efficiency. To meet your identity and access management needs and realize operational improvements, you may need a service provider that can offer a true end-to-end solution. That's where IBM IAM Services targets virtually every aspect of identity and access management across your enterprise, including user provisioning, web access management, single sign-on, multi-factor authentication, and user activity compliance. We offer a range of service options from migration to consulting to fully managed services, and these leverage IBM's leading security tools, technologies, and expertise. Our specialists are really here to work with you to address your individual needs and provide solutions that best match your business and security objectives. And just one thing to note, today IBM manages over 2 billion identities. We're a leader in all major segments of identity and access management market and have been ranked so consistently by the major analyst firms. We've also learned a few things along the way and have a great study today to share from Forrester on how this was done for a Fortune 500 healthcare client. David?
Great. Thanks so much, Mark. All right. So now let's talk about what exactly the TEI, or total economic impact, is. Since for many of you who haven't read Forrester's research or reports before, this may come off as a little bit of a foreign term. All right, so in one sentence, the TEI is an advanced ROI framework that Forrester developed that allows us to identify the comprehensive business impact of a technology investment. Okay, so our surveys have found that over 90% of technology decision makers find value in a business case. However, few business cases today consider all the different facets that are relevant to a business investment decision. So for example, take total cost of ownership, which really only looks at the costs of an investment versus the hard cost savings. ROI will take into account efficiency and effectiveness gains that manifest in a quantifiable business impact, but generally doesn't take into account the risks that organizations may not actually be able to achieve those gains. Now, the TEI takes into account not only the cost savings, and business efficiencies of an investment, but also takes the risks involved as well as the future impact of the investment, something that we call flexibility, which is to say, even if you can't quantify a business impact today, in what other ways could the organization potentially benefit in the future as a result of an investment made today? And this here is just a simplified visual depiction of how we would combine the four facets of an investment decision, right? So the benefits, the costs, the flexibility, and risks, to ultimately determine the total economic impact of a technology investment decision. Now, Forrester takes a multi-step approach to creating these case studies. So we start with our due diligence phase, which involves secondary research as well as consulting with our in-house analysts who are really frequently cited experts in various technology domains. All of that to gain a better in-depth understanding of the product or service. We'll also speak to stakeholders within our client organizations to gain a deeper understanding of the different benefits and costs that their customers might expect to experience. And then we'll take all of this input and then use it to guide interviews with current users of the product or service. Okay, and then what we do is we create a financial model based on the costs and benefits that we identified from the interviewed organizations, and then finally convert that into a written case study. So just a couple of disclosures for you before we get into the real meat and potatoes of this. So first, there is a full study that you can read with all the details, and that's featured on IBM's website. IBM did commission the study. However, we here at Forrester delivered the work and maintained full editorial control. IBM and its customer that we interviewed were able to review the study and provide feedback, but we did not and do not accept any changes to the study that would go against or hide anything that we found. And this case study is just that. It's a case study on what an organization was able to achieve using IBM's IAM services. Now, we aren't here to endorse IBM IAM services, and we certainly aren't here to tell you all that you'll get the same return on investment. What we are here to do, though, is to show you a real unbiased look at how IBM IAM services help the interviewed organization. And ultimately, we want to give you all that are listening in a framework to conduct your own analysis, but really with the confidence that you're measuring the right things and making the right assumptions. So you can look at how we calculated each benefit and cost, look at what assumptions we made and why, and use that as the foundation to build your own business case and figure out what you think the ROI will be for your own institution. And when you are having those conversations internally, you can reference us here at Forrester as an organization that has a reputation for technology and financial analysis as a way to defend your own business case arguments. Great. So now let's take a moment to review the high-level results of our business case analysis before we get into any details. So in a nutshell, the overarching theme from an interview with an IBM IAM Services customer was that IBM IAM Services provides a holistic suite of services designed to address the challenges associated with IAM workloads. Now that includes building a strategy that optimizes IAM workloads for performance and scalability with the right architecture and deployment model. It includes executing an IAM cloud migration, and then finally maintaining and administering an IAM stack, and with the occasional modernization of IAM solutions for an organization's unique environment and use cases. And here are the results of a 3-year investment in IBM IAM Services. Now, we'll put all of this into context later, but You can see here that our analysis revealed that an investment in IBM IAM Services yields a return on investment of 101%, a net present value of $2.7 million, and a payback period of approximately 15 months. Okay, so we'll now take a deep dive into our analysis and walk through some of the individual benefit and cost categories that drove those aforementioned metrics. So first, I'll quickly overview the characteristics of the organization that we interviewed, just to give you some background perspective on the calculations that we're about to go through. So we interviewed a large enterprise health insurance company with between 1 and 10 billion in annual revenues, and that it had been using IBM IAM Services for over 2 years now. And then by year 3, this organization will have migrated 22 IAM applications to the public cloud with the help of IBM's IAM Services. So this customer experienced a number of challenges that drove it to look for a suite of holistic IAM services. So for example, administrators were bogged down with software upkeep, management, and maintenance, really especially given the frequency of support tickets related to IAM applications and migrating IAM to the cloud to automate and streamline some of these manual processes. All that was really an expensive and complex endeavor that the organization couldn't really effectively take on alone. So therefore, it needed a partner that could not only deliver the migration, but also manage the end-to-end process, including IAM Cloud Managed Services post-migration. So what were the outcomes? Well, after engaging IBM IAM Services, this organization was able to effectively outsource IAM maintenance and optimization to the experts at IBM, ensuring that applications were running efficiently and that any changes were deployed correctly. Furthermore, the organization was able to experience these benefits more quickly compared to if it underwent an internally led migration, and at the same time reduce the total cost of migration. So since numbers without any context becomes a little bit difficult to grasp, I've also included a couple of direct quotes from the customer that we interviewed that speak to their experiences with IBM IAM Services. So one salient metric that the organization mentioned was that IBM IAM Services allowed them to onboard 7 applications to the public cloud in a single year, compared to what they estimate they would have been able to accomplish on their own without IBM, which was only 1 application per year. The organization also spoke to the degree with which support and maintenance was streamlined after adopting IAM Services. Now, before, this organization had 5 people supporting the IAM stack, whereas today, this same effort only requires a single FTE. Looking at the holistic set of benefits this organization experienced with IBM IAM Services, they include 1, reduced application onboarding costs, and that's driven by migrations being executed more quickly and at a higher success rate. They include avoided productivity losses from a more reliable IAM environment, resulting in reduced outages and IAM application downtime. Avoided help desk support costs as a result of automating historically manual IAM processes, such as managing and assigning access rights with configuration assistance from IBM. It'll also include maintenance cost savings from streamlined IAM maintenance and administration. And then also in the next couple of slides, we'll take a closer look at each of these benefits to see how exactly they were realized. So starting with reduced application onboarding costs, the organization was able to experience cost savings of $1.9 million by engaging IBM to drive the end-to-end IAM migration process, starting from delivering strategy workshops and creating detailed migration roadmaps, to then executing the migration itself, and then finally managing applications from an identity as a service model. Now, at the bottom of the slide here, you can see the primary inputs that went into calculating the benefit of reduced application onboarding costs. So you start with the number of internal identities, which in the case of this customer is 4,400, and that's across 22 IAM applications. So you multiply that by the average cost to onboard an IAM application per user, which is approximately $30 in Forrester's internal IAM migration model. Then you take 86% of that value, which is what we found to be the average reduction in IAM cloud onboarding time while using IBM IAM services. Now finally, Forrester downward risk adjusts this amount by 5% to remain conservative and account for any potential risks that can hinder other organizations from achieving comparable benefits. Now, this organization also experienced significant cost savings from reducing IAM downtime, equal to a present value of also $1.9 million over 3 years. So by leaving maintenance and management in the hands of the experts at IBM, IAM workloads were properly patched and updated, which ultimately reduced the risk of failure. Now, Forrester calculates that the cost savings impact of this by taking the average number of users impacted by IAM downtime, multiplying that by the average productivity hours lost due to downtime annually, and then finally taking 95% of that. And that's the estimated average reduction in downtime hours with managed identity as a service through IBM IAM. Now, finally, we downward risk adjust this amount by 10% to account for any potential variances in the IAM environments of other organizations. Also, leveraging IBM's IAM professional services, this organization was able to modernize its legacy applications for the cloud to be able to automate manual IAM processes, which include password resets and managing and assigning access rights for internal employees and contractors. So to calculate this, we combine the total number of onboarding, offboarding, and transfer cases, as well as rights modification cases and password reset cases, and then multiply them by the blended average cost per IAM support case of approximately $30. We then take 60% of this, which is the reduction in IAM support cases that the organization was able to experience using IBM IAM services, and then finally downward risk adjust this amount by 5% to account for any potential variances of other organizations. Now, over 3 years, the reduced IAM support costs amounted to a present value of approximately $1.3 million. And our last quantified benefit here is $323K saved over 3 years by streamlining maintenance and administration activities. So by moving to identity as a service, the organization no longer needed to worry about hardware administration, and software administration was refocused from burdensome day-to-day operational tasks to now light supervisory tasks such as whitelisting and reviewing identities. So to calculate this benefit, we take the dollar value of FTE labor needed to maintain the legacy IAM environment internally, and then take 96% of that, which is the percentage reduction in maintenance and administration that this organization achieved through identity as a service with IBM IAM Services. Great. And then there are also benefits that could not be quantified for the purposes of this study, but are still noteworthy and impactful to an IBM IAM Services customer. So, for example, by moving to an identity as a services model, the organization also achieved single sign-on across its ecosystem of enterprise applications, which ultimately saved end users the hassle of remembering multiple passwords, reducing support tickets related to password resets, and saving time for both support staff and end users. Next, as a byproduct of working directly with IBM throughout the end-to-end transformation journey, the organization's internal IT team also picked up on processes within the migration. So it learned how to better manage, for example, administer an IAM program through direct collaboration with and feedback from IBM. Now, finally, with a managed identity program, the organization could heighten its security posture by virtue of having a better handle on privileged access management, automating authorization steps that often lead to errors and compromise security when done manually, and so on and so forth. Great. So moving on to costs. the organization paid IBM for IAM services based on the number and type of services required. So although IBM can offer obviously different IAM services in a piecemeal fashion, in the case of this particular customer, they really ran the whole gamut. So that starts from procuring strategy and assessment sessions, to later engaging IBM to perform the actual cloud migration, and then to finally having IBM optimize and manage the IAM stack on the cloud post-migration. So costs will obviously vary widely depending on the organization and the unique scope of work required. But in this case, over 3 years, the organization spent $260K on strategy and assessment fees, $1.4 million on migration execution, which includes lift and shifting, some workloads, and then refactoring, some light refactoring work. And then finally, $1.5 million for their ongoing managed services, all totaling a present value of approximately $2.7 million. All right. So we went over a lot today, but I want to take a minute here to recap some of the most important snackable data points to take away from today's session. So if you could take away just 4 data points on IBM's IAM services from today's webinar, this would really be it. Our study and analysis found that IBM drove an 86% overall reduction in IAM cloud migration costs. Then, once on an identity as a service model with IBM, the organization also benefited from reduced IAM system downtime by 95%, reduced help desk requests by 60%, and then finally reduced IAM maintenance labor costs by 96%. All right? And that's the eagle view of our study in a nutshell. So I know that you may have some questions in mind after all of that, so I did want to save some time at the end here to give you a chance to ask away. Beth, do we have any questions here from the audience?
Yes, David, thank you so much for that. We do have a couple of questions, and we do have a good enough time to get through them. So this first question, actually, this might go to Marc. Marc, where did the company start in its journey to cloud-based IAM?
That's a great question, Bettiel. So the engagement began really with an assessment period where IBM assessed the company's IAM workloads and developed a robust strategy and roadmap for the deployment to a cloud-based IAM solution. The full deployment was phased over 3 years. So in the first phase, applications that could be migrated to single sign-on without any complications were prioritized first. In the second phase, IBM started on the back-end work with customizations and some of the functionality impacts to the organization. And then lastly, in phase 3, our team of IAM experts tackled some of the very highly customized applications that required full modernization.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. So to the next question, which I think either Marc or David you could take, where do you see your clients focused within IAM today?
Sure. I can take a stab at this question as well. As you probably heard from today, there is a great deal of complexity with migrating from an on-premise IAM solution to a modern cloud-based IAM solution, and we see many clients reaching out to IBM for help in this area. A second area, also IT and security leaders are really focused in on the challenge of protecting the organization from privileged credential abuse, and as well as with the complexity of compliance and the potential risk of data breaches, organizations are now taking a very proactive approach to privileged access management. So we see those 2 areas as really one of the bigger priority areas for our customers when it comes to identity and access management.
Wonderful, wonderful. David, was there any parts that you wanted to add to that?
No, I think that fairly sums it up.
Awesome. Okay, perfect. So let's see. We do have one more question. Could you talk through some of the factors that go into the risk adjustment?
Yeah, sure. So I can take that. So Forrester applies a downward risk adjustment to benefits as well as upward risk adjustments to costs. And that's really to account for potential variances of other organizations and to ensure that calculations are made as conservatively as possible. So, for example, for several of the benefits, the individual organization's legacy IAM environment will most likely impact the magnitude of benefits that it can potentially experience from IBM's IAM services, right? So with more complex legacy environments, for instance, benefiting more from professional services as well as managed services. Similarly to that, for each of these benefits and costs, we evaluate potential drivers of variance and apply anywhere from a 5% to a 15% risk adjustment to the number of the benefit based on the impact of those drivers. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. That makes sense. Okay, let me just make sure we scroll through. Thank you to everyone that was asking other questions. We tried to answer as many as we could online as well. I believe that wraps it up for Q&A.
All right.
Fantastic. Awesome. So thank you, David. Thank you, Mark, for the content today. Thank you, everyone, for your questions and your engagement today. As another reminder, the on-demand recording will be available in 24 hours. And you can access this by using the same link that you used today. So on behalf of all of us here at IBM, we hope you enjoyed today's presentation and have a productive and secure rest of your day. Thank you again.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you.